think we all know Erebus, first chaplain of the Wordbearers, the self-proclaimed Hand of Destiny, and the key architect of the Horus heresy. He is, without being too dramatic, one of the single greatest causes of the pain and suffering that now consumes the galaxy. The man is a well-known dickhead, a scheming little rat whose actions set the Imperium well and truly on the path it's on, and who, seemingly from childhood, planned and nurtured the destruction of what little hope there was for the Emperor's dream to become a reality. And there is already plenty of content out there that dissects Erebus in great detail. Some are absolutely fantastic resources, and others are less so. But instead of simply vomiting up more information that I'm sure you have already heard and already know very intimately, I want to take a slightly different approach. Having just finished a fresh reread of the original Heresy trilogy, a few questions have been bugging me. Ones that are often raised as criticisms for these books and their characters, ones that I think deserve some real investigation, and ones that I think will help paint a clearer picture of what went down in those fateful final days of the Great Crusade. Why did the Warmaster, Horus Lupercal, favoured and supposed first found son of the Emperor, allow the 17th Legion snake named Erebus to be in his presence in the first place, let alone whisper poison in his ear? Why did Horus allow Erebus to have a level of influence that seemingly even overshadowed that of his Mournival, his most trusted, most respected, and most loyal sons? How did Erebus build such a powerful hold over Horus, even before Davin, and how was this blind faith developed so quickly and seemingly maintained for such a prolonged period of time? It seems to me that the first thing we should try to understand when answering these questions is to actually understand Horus and the way he thinks. Horus was a proven leader, an incredible warrior, and a figure of trust and reason. A father to his legion, a son to the Emperor, and a true brother to his primarchs. But above all, Horus was a statesman and a diplomat. He had an incredible ability to win over any crowd, to silence all dissent diplomatically, and to build consensus where others saw only division and discord. It was this gift, more than his military genius and experience, that secured his place as Warmaster, entrusted by his father the Emperor above all others to lead the Great Crusade in his stead, to command not just the armies and the legions of the growing Imperium, but his own brothers too, to ensure unity as humanity spread its light to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. But Horus was also ambitious, and as Warmaster, he was observant, and he was tired. Tired of the constant requests for aid and for reinforcement. Tired of the endless war, of grinding bloody conquest, and of the destruction of stubborn, ignorant civilizations who died for blindness or for pride. Tired of the isolation that came with his rank, distance from his brothers by duty and command, not to mention by distance too. Tired of the suffocating bureaucracy, baseline human administrators, tax collectors and functionaries who cared nothing for the blood spilled for the worlds he and his sons had fought to bring into compliance, only for the tribute and capital these mortals could extract from those bruised and broken worlds. The Crusade was no longer about enlightenment and unity, it was about quotas, resources, and schedules. Endless edicts delivered and dictated by careless bureaucrats who had never set foot on a battlefield or witnessed the cost of victory or defeat. And after the disastrous Interrex campaign, Horus was lost. A disillusioned demigod with too many questions and very few he trusted to share his innermost thoughts and doubts. A Warmaster with too much time to think between wars. A leader pulled in too many directions, weighed down by too many demands and requests from too many voices across too many battlefields. a father surrounded by sons who either question too much or not at all, a brother without his brothers, a son without his father who had left abruptly and confusingly to work on something he trusted none to know about. And with this in mind, let's now look at Erebus from Horus's perspective at the time. Erebus was the first chaplain of his beloved and trusted brother Lorgar's legion, the Word-Bearers. Erebus's role was one of great respect, equivalent in status to that of a first captain, much like Horus's own dear Abaddon. But a chaplain was more than just a battlefield commander and leader. The position demanded diplomacy, intellect, and above all, wisdom. It was a role that blended leadership with counseling, part warrior, part mentor, part confessor or therapist if you like. And Erebus was the first among chaplains, the second highest authority within a legion once known fittingly as the Imperial Heralds. But more than this, Erebus was a skilled and renowned warrior and duelist, a well-known, well-respected name. A proven, reliable mentor who had passed through the legions, giving his sage, unbiased wisdom and advice to all who needed or wished to hear it, offering guidance and understanding into the ears of the Imperium's greatest and most influential warriors. He was a man who seemed to belong everywhere and one who always knew just what to say. In many ways, Erebus was like Horus's beloved Sejanus returned from the dead, a charismatic, reassuring, and steadying voice, and his presence as such would fill a hole in the Warmaster's heart. As is described in Horus Rising, Erebus was a somber, serious figure. His record and heritage was such that he seemed to carry the weight of a primarch with him. He was, after all, Lorgar's chosen mouthpiece. His quiet manner and soft, composed voice commanded instant respect from all who met him. And upon his arrival, when he linked up with the 16th once more with news and requests from Lorgar and his legion, it was said that he had shelved his reason for coming, wishing to add nothing to the Warmaster's already immense burden, and had instead acted as a solid counsel and advisor with no agenda of his own. So this is how Erebus wormed his way in. He came to Horus at the perfect moment when the Warmaster was most vulnerable and when he had started asking himself some very profound questions. Erebus came with the right reputation, the right skills, and the right motive. He knew how to present himself as exactly what Horus needed. A trusted friend who wanted nothing and who understood. And Erebus did understand. He understood all too well. He saw the burden pressing down on Horus, the weight of command, the creeping disillusionment, the gnawing doubts, and the growing confusion. He recognized the flaws and the gaps in the Warmaster's inner circle, their blind spots, their failings. Loken was too blindly loyal to even entertain the notion of questioning the Emperor or his plans. Abaddon was too headstrong and emotional. He would have no patience or wit for deep, complex conversations. Little Horus Aximand and maybe Malagos too were too bound to Horus and the Legion itself, not able to look beyond the immediate and of examining something greater without bias or restraint. And Torgadon, he was never one to weigh such grave matters with the seriousness that they demanded. They could fight for Horus, they could lead his sons, they could represent the heart and soul of his legion and embody the might of the 16th and its unity. But they could not understand his darkest doubts. They could not offer him affirming truths in his hour of uncertainty. But Erebus could. The wise, insightful, philosophical Erebus, unbiased, level, intelligent, patient. Where the Mournival might have questioned, Erebus reassured. Where they argued and debated, Erebus listened. Where they contradicted, Erebus agreed. He did not challenge Horus, he validated him. He made the Warmaster feel heard, understood, and justified. And Erebus turned the concerned observations of a worried son into the growing, reasonable convictions of a reluctant and righteous revolutionary. And this, I believe, is why he listened to Erebus, why he sought his counsel above all others save his brothers. Horus needed an external voice, one strong and unclouded by duty or blind loyalty. He needed someone who could articulate the thoughts and conclusions that he himself dared not voice, the doubts that festered deep within him but could never leave his mouth. I believe Horus thought that this was something that he could not entrust to his most loyal sons, not even the Mournival, for they were too bound to him, to themselves, to the Emperor, to the ideals that they had been made to uphold. They were not built for this purpose. They were too different, too loyal to speak what others might call dissent, too blind maybe to even entertain the idea that the Emperor's grand design was in any way questionable or flawed. To them, doubt from the Emperor's favoured son could be the seeds of treachery, but to Erebus, this doubt was exactly the opportunity, so long awaited. And now, when we also consider the hints given to us in Horus Rising by the infallible Dan Abnett in all his written perfection, we can see that Horus, ambitious as ever, had always believed himself far better suited to govern than the Imperium's own administrators. He always believed that the Imperium was won by posthumans and therefore it should rightfully be governed by them. Some might say he and a few of his traitorous brothers held a deep-seated superiority complex towards humanity, even to the point where one could argue that he was, in a way, xenophobic towards the very species he was created to protect and uplift. At the same time, Horus also resented the attention that his brothers received upon their discovery, feeling the sting of what you could call jealousy after spending so many decades alone with the Emperor in the early days, as we see in Wolfsbane. But in a contradiction that defines much of the Warmaster, he also mourned the absence of his brothers himself later on, longing for their company even as he begrudged their own attention from their father. In this way, Horus actually comes across to me as a somewhat anxious individual that had deep-rooted cracks from the beginning. He may well have projected himself as the unshakable leader and the perfect son, but beneath that hard exterior, he seems to have always been a man riddled with some sense of doubt and a few gnawing insecurities. This is exactly how Erebus was able to work so efficiently. Horus was not perfect. He was maybe insecure, anxious, but definitely, ultimately, too human. Human enough to doubt, human enough to be imperfect, human enough to be manipulated, deceived, and led astray by those with malicious intent, those like bloody, thrice-cursed Erebus. And as I say all this out loud, I'm sort of coming to the realization that this has really become more of a Horus video than an Erebus one. So that's a bit interesting, but it's also quite revealing, because to understand the impact of Erebus and the speed at which things went down, we really do have to look deep and carefully into Horus as well. So I believe the criticism of Horus's fall and of the original trilogy is far too heavy-handed. The significance of Erebus in those early days is sometimes laughed at and mocked, but to me it is perfectly justifiable, and it tells us a lot about Horus and the greater context of the Great Crusade. Put simply, Erebus's influence over Horus and his hand in igniting the heresy is perfectly understandable and appropriate when we consider the broader context and the deeper complexities of their characters. Anyway, thanks for watching. Dystopian Chimp, out.